In this episode of the METC podcast, we do some app smashing in the Tech and 60. In the main content, we talk a little golf, robotics world. We talk about online learning with a program called Launch. We talk about blended learning, Senate Bill 603, otherwise known as Missouri Course Access and School Program, effective online learning building, digital citizenship, the ISTE certification, the importance of voice and choice in student learning, online course training, the importance of timely feedback, and Eddie Haskell makes an appearance, and so does the EdTech Pod Squad in the I Am METC segment of the show. Let's get started. Welcome to the Midwest Education Technology Communities podcast, otherwise known as METC. METC is a nonprofit organization based out of St. Louis, Missouri, with a mission to motivate, engage, transform, and connect all learners to advocacy, partnerships, and professional learning opportunities. METC is a premier affiliate of ISTE. To learn more about METC, follow us on social media at METC Ed Plus. You may also check out our website at metcedplus.org. METC is a program of Education Plus. To learn more about Education Plus, go to edplus.org. It is now time to begin our current episode. We thank you for listening and enjoy the learning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the METC podcast and episode 64. In this episode, we talk about blended and online learning with Brian Reed of the Rockwood School District. I want to thank you for listening to our show, whether it's your first time or your 64th time. I greatly appreciate that. Be sure to connect with us on Twitter at METCEdPlus or join the conversation using the hashtag METCPodcast. You can connect with us on the Twitter feed or on our Flipgrid channel as well. You can search METC Podcast there. And each episode has a challenge. So we throw out a question related to the topic of each episode and ask for you to continue the conversation on Twitter and Flipgrid using the hashtag METC Podcast. And this challenge for today's episode is to share your blended learning or online learning experiences. Are you teaching? Are you taking some classes? What are some tips or tricks or some neat ideas that you've seen to engage your students or engage others in this different way of learning? Share using the hashtag METC Podcast or find the Flipgrid channel searching METC Podcast and leave your response, and your response could be in a future episode. So, if you hadn't listened to last week's release, it was a quick little audio file on where METC is going to be and what's happening with us over at ISTE. So, I want to expand and remind you for the next 6 weeks or so where I will be, in case you happen to be there as well, and you can come by and say hello, we can meet, maybe we record a quick soundbite for a future episode, who knows. I'll definitely have some stickers and other information about the podcast and METC. So, next week, on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be at the Go CSD Innovation Summit in Branson, Missouri. Come on down and say hello to me. I know a lot of folks down in that Springfield area, so hopefully I get to see some of you and pass out some stickers and say hello. The week after that, I'll be in Orlando, Florida. We'll be doing an ISTE certification training on June 6th and 7th. If you are interested in becoming ISTE certified and you happen to be going down to Florida on vacation or something, or maybe you just want to take a vacation and you might as well get certified while you're on vacation, you can join us. You can sign up still at metcedplus.org, but it will close really, really soon. So if you are interested, get on there and let us know. And then on the Saturday, June 8th, I will be at EdCamp Magic. And so pretty neat to experience that. I've heard a lot about it. And so I'm excited to kind of be down there and attend that. The week after that, we have our METC Summer Institute, or METC SI. And that is June 17th and 18th here in St. Louis, Missouri, at Missouri Baptist University. So hopefully you can join us for those 2 days. On that Wednesday, I will be at the South Central Learning Summit. That's June 19th down in Rolla, Missouri. And I'll be doing a couple of general sessions there as well. And then June 21st through 26th, I will be at the ISTE conference. Again, a whole 6-7 minutes about that and my appearances there in last week's quick release of our information there. So check that out there. All right, so it is time to go ahead and get into the episode. Again, I have a great conversation with Brian Reed in the feature content. Before I get to the feature content, though, we have this week's Tech in 60, and we are going to do some app smashing with Screencastify and Google Keep. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to the Tech in 60 for this episode. Just a quick reminder, all of these Tech in 60s can be found on our YouTube channel. Just search METC, and you will be able to find that. Or you can type in the Midwest EdTech Community or the Midwest Education Technology Community, and you will find our YouTube channel there. All kinds of videos are available on that channel for you to learn. In this episode, we're going to do some app smashing, and so if you've watched the YouTube channel, you may have seen my episode on Screencastify. It is my go-to for screencasting. It's just one that I really, really enjoy. I love that it saves automatically to my Google Drive. I love the features that it adds. I do pay for it now just because of all the cool features it does and for the amount of time that I actually use it. There is a free version, though, that gives you 50 free videos that really is enough. And so, but, you know, I do believe that if you like something enough, that those people who create that work hard enough, and they deserve a little money as well. So I pay for that service. It's an awesome service. So, but when I was in the classroom, I used Screencastify in conjunction with Google Keep. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So Google Keep, if you're not familiar with that app, it is a core app within your G Suite lineup there. And it is basically like sticky notes kind of on steroids. It follows all the G Suite tools with the ability to share and copy and all that, collaborate in real time kind of thing. It works across all your devices, so it's a pretty sweet little tool. I use it both for work and for personal life at home, and absolutely love it. When I was in the classroom, I also used it with my students. And so we used it a couple different ways. And the way we're going to talk about on this particular Tech in 60 is I used it for a daily class checklist. So I taught 5th grade. I had the students all day long, of course. And so we had a daily checklist. And so I would go through the day and say, okay, we have math at this time. We're going to be doing this lesson and this unit. We'll be doing these pages in the workbook, or we'll be doing these problems or whatever. Your resources can be found here. In reading, we're going to be reading these pages. You're going to have to do this assignment, that kind of thing, throughout the whole day. So it's a real long checklist for the students. I shared that checklist with all the kids, and the kids got into a habit where they would make a copy of that checklist for their own. So every morning, their first task of the morning was to go to Google Keep, look at that checklist, and click the 3 dots and select Make a Copy. So now they had their own copy of the checklist for the day. So as they finished content, they can check items off of their list, and they knew what they could do when they were finished. They can go ahead. There was no reason to let them sit there and get themselves into trouble. So it really helped out in that respects. How I use Screencastify, so I spent literally 90 seconds before the school day started. And I know some middle school teachers have taken this and ran with it as well, and they spend 60 seconds or fewer seconds before each class starts and create a quick little video using Screencastify. You capture your image, you capture the checklist for the day, and I just walk through that checklist, explaining in more detail what that checklist is. I don't want that checklist to be super, super duper long, but I want to be able to explain what some of those things mean. And so they can always reference that video. So I take that video, and the beauty of Screencastify is that it automatically uploads to your drive, which means it has a shareable link. And so once that video is done saving, I click on that link and copy it, and then I paste it at the very, very top of the daily checklist. So now students have direct access to a video form of the checklist that they're going to be working with all day long. Now, the beauty of this was that became their morning work, essentially. I got rid of having to do the morning work that was really tedious, meaningless, really. We didn't have time much to go over that morning work, like, say, math problems or the dictation or correcting of sentences. I got rid of all of that because it wasn't really making a difference anyway. And students now were listening to their day, what they're going to do for the day, and were able to start on their work for the day. And what that did for me was I was able to actually greet every child at the door. Going up, getting my degree, said, oh, you should always meet your kids at the door. That's great. I loved that idea. I tried doing it every year for the first 6-7 years of my career. I greeted every 5 kids at the door. And then once those 5 kids got in the door, I had to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to do, or they were on task, or they were not misbehaving. And I missed kids. And then I missed the other 5 kids. And then I missed it was crazy. And so no matter what I tried to do, I ended up missing some of the kids. And that frustrated me year after year. Well, this little tidbit allowed me, because they had their headphones, I knew what they were watching, they knew what they could do. Now I was able to greet all 25, all 30, all 20 kids of my class and not have to worry if the kids were on task. And so it was great. It was easy to do. Literally took 90 seconds before school started to record that video and post it. It did not take long. It was so worth it, and I highly recommend looking into it. So Google Keep, Screencastify, definitely worth checking out. Again, the video form is on our YouTube channel. Just search Midwest Education Technology Community on YouTube, and you'll find our channel. Subscribe there and enjoy all of those Tech in 60s when they come out on Fridays each week. Thanks for checking out this Tech in 60 for the METC podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the main content side of this episode. I have another awesome guest with me, as usual. His name is Brian Reed. Brian, welcome to the episode.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be with you again.
Yeah, if you recognize his voice, he was on the ISTE certification episode with the other panel of ISTE certified educators. So as I go through his biography, that of course is top of the list. He is ISTE certified educator. He is an METC presenter. He's been at our conference quite a bit over the years and always helps out at our conference. He's Google certified level 1 and 2. And he's the writer of Spanish online curriculum for Launch. And we're going to ask about Launch here in a minute. District robotics coordinator, and have sent 3 teams to Worlds in the past 4 years. I've also got questions about that too. And then he's a former Spanish teacher and golf coach. I get, again, more questions to ask Brian before we even get into the main content. So welcome, Brian. I'm excited. Just that biography sounds pretty cool. I'm excited to learn more about you, buddy.
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to share, and it's good to be with you for sure.
So let's go ahead and get into the important stuff. Golf coach. I didn't realize you were a golf coach. How have we not played golf before?
I was asking myself that same question yesterday. You know, I've been playing since I was 8, and my dad got me involved. My dad actually was a semi-professional golf player, had a sponsor ready to back him to actually go on tour, and then he fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, met my mom. I meant that in a good way, and started to have family plans and work for Boeing and kind of put the golf thing on the back seat. But I picked up the bug and have been playing for a long time. And so when I started teaching, I hopped right into a golf coach position and coached for about 16 years. And, you know, it was phenomenal experience, and I still get out and play quite a bit. So I would love to join you in a round on the link sometime. That would be awesome.
That's all. Yeah, we'll have to do that. You'll have to give me 25 strokes or something like that.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to do that for sure.
And then
you can be my
district robotics coordinator. So I a little bit into robotics, but I have no idea what you mean by worlds in the last 4 years. So 3 teams in 4 years, that seems pretty stellar.
Yeah, in Rockwood, we have several different robotics teams, and I happen to be the coordinator for our high school level team. So we have 9 teams across our 4 high schools, and we all belong to the FTC side of FIRST Robotics. And so there's 4 different divisions. Well, actually 5. They're adding one for preschoolers now too. But there's FRC, which is like the big robots that compete. Then there's FTC, which are the smaller ones that compete on the field. Then you have FLL, which is First Lego League, and then FLL Junior, which is like a junior version of the Lego League. And now you have FLL Junior Discovery, which is meant for the little ones. And so, I happened to be tapped to take over the robotics program a few years back when the coordinator at that time got a job transfer to a different position in the district and was not allowed to be the coordinator anymore. And so they thought of me, and I've absolutely loved it. At that time, I wasn't coaching because when I switched over into the technology role, I was asked to step down from that. And so this was a natural fit, and I've loved it. And so I get the chance to basically be what an AD is to sports. That's what I am for robotics. So I'm the bigwig behind the scenes that controls the purse strings and makes the schedule and all that good stuff. So I'm having a great time. And so we actually just got back from Houston last week. We were in Houston down at the World Championships. And so one of our teams competed well enough across the way. They qualified to go to state, which is held at Missouri S&T. And then from there, they qualified to go to the World Championships. And so, and only, what do they say? The top 4% of the teams worldwide make it to the championships. And so we've definitely been representing Rockwood quite strongly for the past few years, which is awesome.
That is awesome. That's a great honor, and what an awesome opportunity for those kids.
For sure. Absolutely. We just love the tie-in from STEM to even the softer skills that they have to include, the conversation, negotiations, and problem solving, all that stuff that goes into robotics is really cool to be able to see them grow and work on their gracious professionalism. And I don't know, it's just really different than coaching a sport, but getting to see these kids grow with their teamwork and design thinking and all. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and I couldn't imagine having that experience growing up through high school and all that. So it's cool that your district has that opportunity for them. And they get experience. I've been to that Lego League actually when it was here in St. Louis. It's amazing. So pretty cool they got to go down to Houston.
Absolutely.
So let's translate into the current topic, which is online and blended learning. And in your bio, you say you wrote Spanish online curriculum for Launch. Can you explain what Launch is?
Sure. Launch is the online learning platform that actually is hosted by the Springfield School District. They do a lot of great work in Springfield in their district, and there was a need for an online learning opportunity that they started, about less than 10 years ago. But they've been working really hard to partner with DESE and with districts around Missouri to offer a solid online learning experience. And so they're one of the only companies in Missouri that has a true foothold in how things play out in the world of education in terms of offering that online option, especially since the Senate Bill 603 was passed. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but being able to partner with them to not only experience the classes that they've written, but also now being able to write some curriculum for them has been a really cool opportunity. And I'm excited where this is going to take us, because in Rockwood, we're actually trying to mimic what they're doing in Springfield by writing sort of a sister version of the Launch program. So while we're partnered with them, we're also branching off and trying to do our own thing. And that's kind of where we're at with that.
Nice. Yeah. So our topic is blended online learning. We're going to kind of focus in on the blended part to start and see how that bleeds over to the online and how we can make our online version kind of blended. And so first, let's explain also what blended learning is.
Sure. So blended learning basically is an opportunity for kids to learn that includes at least a part of the education being online, where the students have control over the time, the place, the path, or the pacing. Part of it is in a brick and mortar setting as well, so somewhere away from home, whether it's a school or a sanctioned, public place. And then it also includes the modalities along, each student's learning path within a course or a subject that are connected to provide basically this integrated learning experience. So you have part online, part brick and mortar, and then all the personalization that comes with it.
Very nice. And you have different type of experiences, like station rotation, that kind of goes into all that? Or?
Absolutely. So there's definitely different modes or methods to handling a blended learning experience. And one of the most popular tends to be the flipped learning, right? So whenever you think of flipped learning, the students interact with some content at home, then they return the next day to do an enrichment type of activity. So you're not spending a lot of the face-to-face time explaining the content. And so that tends to be a very popular piece of this. But yeah, you're absolutely right when you mention rotations, right? So there's the station rotation piece where the kids would rotate from station to station inside the classroom, do something digital, and interact with it in a certain way. So that is definitely a piece of the blended learning experience. There's lab rotation, to where you may go to a separate part of the building to do a particular lab, or maybe a different part of the same classroom to experience a lab of some kind. And then, of course, do some enrichment material with that. And you have individual rotations in the mix, which, of course, are students are rotating through stations, but it's sort of like as needed. They don't go to every station. They just go to the stations that they need to go to learn whatever it is that maybe they need extra help with, or they want to enrich themselves on. And so it's a little bit different than a station rotation, because they get to choose which ones they go to. You have the flex opportunity, of course, which is where the kids, again, pick and choose what they need to learn and how they need to learn it. And of course, the enriched virtual and a la carte, which actually lends itself to being more completely online, sort of like a university experience, but it's more of a standalone. The content is delivered without sort of a face-to-face interaction, or very minimal face-to-face interaction, and then they can tap into a teacher as needed for questions or for feedback or that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And so, like the station rotation, lab rotation, the individual rotation, well, maybe not the individual. So are those more of the brick and mortar type things you put in place, or is there a way to kind of include those in on the online space as well?
I would argue that most of it's brick and mortar, to be honest. That's what lends itself to more that blended piece. But I will say there's definitely been an uptick in the number of labs that kids can do online, completely without even the brick and mortar. For example, my wife, I know we're talking university when I say this, but this happens at high school too. But my wife is currently taking some online classes, and a class she's going to be taking very soon is a geology class. And as a part of this geology class, there is a lab. And so we have to actually buy this geology kit where they're going to send her this sample material, whether it's, test tubes and different rocks and minerals and stuff that we're actually going to have to, well, I say I'll probably end up helping her, but we're going to have to basically do samples on, and then she's going to have to obviously do some data tracking and upload the data. So I think that's actually a really cool opportunity, because especially if you don't have the physical space inside of a school to build a lab, or if you're looking for economical ways to provide a lab type experience, there truly are some really cool online only options for that. And I'm excited for that. I'm kind of a science geek, which ties into robotics too. But yeah, so I'm excited for that. And the flipped classroom can definitely be done online as well. So there's bits and pieces of all of those modes that tie into both blended and online.
Very nice. Yeah, I'd imagine I could see it being online only, but I don't think you get the full effect. But I mean, I haven't taught an online course in a couple of years, so who knows what's out there now with all this crazy cool stuff. So
for sure.
All right, so this is not a political show by any stretch of the imagination, so I don't really want to get into politics. But let's go ahead and talk about politics. What is Senate Bill 603 and how does it affect us educators?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So last year, former Governor Greitens signed into law the Senate Bill 603, which is actually more, I guess, commonly known as the Missouri Course Access and Virtual School Program, which is a mouthful for sure. But it basically says that every district has to provide some sort of online option for their students, whether the school district pays a third-party company like a Launch to provide those courses, or whether they write those courses and provide them themselves. Every district has to provide an opportunity for the kids to take an online class or course or series of courses. What I thought was kind of the neatest thing was that it affects K-12, not just secondary. And so, technically, if a family wanted it, they could have their kindergartner take an online class, and the school district would have to find a way to make that happen. There is a clause in there, I should say, that allows the school district to sort of have an out, I guess, if they really can't find a course that would serve as an equal to what they could take at the school, or if there's an entity that really they don't really have access to, then they can say, hey, we really tried, but we can't offer X, Y, or Z because it's just not going to be feasible. And from what I know so far, since this bill is still fairly new, that really hasn't been an issue. There's definitely been a lot of cool things happening with that Launch program. And again, I don't want to keep talking about Launch because I don't officially work for them full time, but it is one of the strongest. They have the strongest foothold right now in this world. And so a lot of districts are tapping into the Launch program. I think MOCAP was another program that Missouri offers that foots the bill too. So there's definitely a couple of known entities and with that complies with that Senate Bill 603. And there are tons of districts that are exploring writing their own. I think I mentioned that Rockwood, we're exploring writing our own to make sure that we're compliant. But in the meantime, as we create, we are paying, Launch to host the classes that we don't currently have ourselves in Rockwood. And I think it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, to see especially the smaller school districts or the districts that may not have as much financial resource, to see how they handle this particular law and how they comply. But again, from what I know, there's not much data on that at the moment.
So yeah, that sounds like a really neat idea. I can imagine that being a great resource for schools and for families. I'm surprised, just like you saying, that it's a K-12, so kindergartners could be taking online courses. That's really intriguing. And who's taking the course? Is it the parents or is it the kids? But against that resource, I guess. So it's awesome that that's there. But also, it's kind of scary for schools that they kind of are. They're required to have that offerings. And I work with a lot of small schools that budget-wise just don't have any funds. So I can see them kind of scrambling for that. But so what kind of effects are you seeing or you think you might see on educators themselves?
Well, I think that it could potentially lead to more job creation. I know there's always a big fear of teachers losing jobs whenever you introduce technology to the classroom, but that connection with somebody on the other end is extremely important. So at least in Rockwood, we've actually talked about expanding the number of teachers we've hired, or at least for now, reshuffling the teachers that are currently here to make it more efficient, with the plans on expanding that. Because obviously the more that you offer, the more workforce you're going to have behind that to support it. That includes not just teachers, that also includes people in my role, in the technology role, and even in the curricular departments and the data department, because obviously, again, you expand your offerings, that leads to more technology support, which leads to more curricular development, which leads to more data being produced, which leads to more data needing to be sort of analyzed. And so I think it could really be a strong movement for the district in terms of employment. I think for educators also, it really forces a redesign of the curricular needs. When you start thinking about curriculum in terms of online delivery or even the blended delivery, that really sort of at least in my opinion, makes us stop and redesign kind of what we do offer, how we offer it, what kinds of activities and best practices are we implementing with what we're offering. And so I think that could only help us become better teachers, since it is emphasizing those best practices. And I think too, it allows the teacher to be a true facilitator in an online environment. And the teacher really isn't responsible for the delivery of the content. The content is being delivered by whatever management system that's been chosen, whether it's like a Canvas or Schoology or whatever. So the teacher becomes more of that facilitator, the assessor, the deliverer of feedback, if you will. And so ultimately, which is probably one of the most important pieces of learning, not the regurgibarfing of information to the kids, right? So that's my phrase, regurgibarf, trademarked, copyrighted. But yeah, so I really do think it allows that facilitator role to be truly capitalized and fulfilled.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I mean, the blended learning module or the modalities, I mean, that's great teaching and a great way to keep your students engaged, to provide them with many different experiences. And so, the whole stand in front of the room for 50 minutes or 75, whatever your class is, that's not the way students learn. Maybe they learned that way in the past, but they've changed a little bit. And so, getting teachers thinking a little differently about how to make their curriculum a little more accessible. I think that's a great look on that. And so from an effects on student standpoint, I guess it gives them a little more choice in where they can get their information.
For sure. It definitely gives the kids more of an avenue to not only choose what they learn, but also how they learn it. So it allows for more flexibility in the types of products that they create to demonstrate their learning, I think. Especially with the online piece, there's a lot of really cool tools out there that the kids could tap into. And if you're boxed into a traditional lesson in a physical room in front of the kids, we don't always allow enough voice and choice in that kind of a setting. So this kind of opens up those doors for the kids to have a little bit more choice. And also, just like the definition of blended, it gives them potentially more control over their pace. We know that not every student learns at the same pace at the same time. So in an online or even a blended setting, you can allow for more of that personalization, a little bit more of that student-controlled pacing, the asynchronous learning that can happen, which could be very powerful. If it takes a kid, 2 months to get through a course, or if it takes them 12 months to get through a course. I mean, ultimately, that's sort of the goal, is to personalize education for every student and tying everything that we do into standards. And so I think this is definitely, at least for Rockwood, a really cool way to address that as we continue to move forward. And whether that's for acceleration purposes or for enrichment purposes or whatever, again, that full support of personalization is what it's all about, and having that flexibility.
Yeah, so the Senate Bill 603, we'll probably put, is there a link? I'm sure there's a link out there we can add to our show notes if people want to read up more on it. So let's go ahead and go to the show notes, metcedplus.org. Learn more about it. That's a very intriguing bill. I have to imagine that maybe somebody that really wanted to advance the idea of teaching in the pajamas kind of put that forward and became reality. So very interesting, very good for students. I think good for all around, I think, at least from this standpoint. It's not like, beneficial. So we're talking about that online course, right? And many, if not most, of our listeners would have a good idea of what effective instruction looks like in the classroom. We kind of just talked about that too, right? But how does this translate to like an online space when building a course?
Yeah, I mean, based on the experiences that I've had, as a part of the blended learning brigade is kind of what we're calling it, as well as the online learning curriculum writing team. I think you have to be extra methodical when you plan online lessons. It's not just, I'm going to take a lesson I would normally do in the classroom and just slap it onto an online platform. I really do think the intricacies of an online learning piece have to be really well thought out and really well planned, storyboarded, for lack of better words. And so I think that on the back end, that also helps tie in the SAMR process a lot too, because you're thinking about how to up the game in a more concise way. So, since there is little or no face-to-face connection, if you're truly online, you really can't assume that the kids are going to get it. And so the activities you design have to be sort of thinking through all of the possibilities, all the way the kids would learn, potentially wrapped into a couple of activities. And so you need to make sure that the activities are varied. It can't be the same old, same old. It's not a scripted formula where they're going to, interact with something and then prove that they know it. It's what can they do with it in this online space? And so, maybe they're going to read something, maybe they're going to watch something, maybe they're going to, interact in a discussion board, maybe they're going to create a presentation and sort of have others chime in a comment section or whatever. So it really does sort of increase that interactivity too, which I think has to be, again, using the word methodically, planned out, because again, from my experience, there's a misconception that since it's online, there's not going to be any interaction between the students. How are you going to build relationships? And I actually think that the online learning could even support interactions in that relationship to be even stronger than what it could be in a traditional classroom. So again, thinking through those little pieces are very, very important. I think that also ties in, and I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but it probably ties in really well too to digital citizenship, because not only then are you worried about how the kids are learning, but now since it's online, we've got to deal with copyright issues. We've got to deal with screen time. We've got that digital health piece. We've got to deal with, all these digital citizenship components, how to behave online, how to respond to somebody, what language to use, what do I post? So it's actually a really, really nice way to emphasize good, healthy digital citizenship as well. In terms of resources, that's probably been the biggest struggle, I would say, especially as a former Spanish teacher. We always kind of struggled for real, authentic resources, but given the experiences I've had, I know they're out there. I spent a lot of time researching OER, those open educational resources, and there's plenty of them no matter what you teach. And so really digging in and finding those resources that are going to be concise, that are going to be appropriate for the audience you're trying to work with, making sure that it fits the curriculum that's been written and the standards you're trying to assess. But truly giving that a lot of time is important, I think, too.
So what I hear you say there, Brian, is that we need to ask Launch to really send us over to Spain to interact and record real world experiences so you can put that in your course.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. I would volunteer for that in a heartbeat, for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out to Launch and see what they say.
I'm sure they've got the budget for that, right?
Or Rockwood, either we need one. So
right.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So no, I think that's some good points, and I love it. Might have been a little bit of a tangent, but I don't think it was. Did sit is very important, and all those points that you mentioned, the screen time, because you're dealing with online courses, the sitting the whole time while doing that definitely plays a role in that online experience. And so, you and I both are working with the certification, and it is a blended model, 2 days in person, 8 weeks online, and so there's a lot of online work, and the curriculum that we are putting on and having the participants complete is awesome. And it's got a lot of what we just talked about, varied experiences, different types of resources, and they're creating a lot of stuff. But we've seen educators struggle to get work done or staying on on task. Like right now I'm with one, and we've got some teachers who are almost 3 weeks behind. And so is there any tips or tricks in order to engage that learner? Because that's the only issue they have, is that when you come to a class, you're in that class. Yeah, you still have to engage while you're in that class, but I'm in there, right? And with it being an online space, you can't really force someone into the class. So how do you kind of pull them in and almost intrigue them to come to the course every day?
No, that's a great question, and I agree with you that the ISTE certification process really tried to capitalize on the variety of activities and how we interacted with each other. I thought that was actually handled really well, because for me, when I went through that process, I was also able to do something with what I was interacting with. It wasn't just, here's a discussion board, respond to it and reply to 2 other people, and then I forget about it. Although from what I've been told from the launch people, that's kind of how students handle online discussions. And so I really appreciate the fact that I was able to do something with my discussion through that certification process after the fact. I applied it to an artifact. I applied it to another discussion down the road that tied it back into the original one. And actually that was, and I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second, but that's actually one of the reasons why through the Spanish curriculum I've been writing with Launch, I've actually made it a point to reuse the same discussion boards 2 or 3 times within the same unit, which according to Launch really hasn't happened before, because again, once a student thinks that they're done with it, they just move on and forget about it. So I've been purposeful and methodical and retying that same discussion board back in at a later point where they can apply new knowledge to the discussion they had just a week or 2 before. So, having those kinds of activities are very helpful for that participation piece. I think up front, explaining the purpose and the why. I think just like if I were in a class face-to-face with students, if I'm transparent and explain why we're doing this, how this is going to tie into their overall learning, they're going to be more apt to do it and to stick with it. There's definitely that personalization piece, having them have that voice and choice in how they demonstrate their learning. That's extremely important, because I feel if we box them in to, you're going to write a paragraph of X number of words and use these vocab words, and then this, that takes out the autonomy, I think, a little bit. So if we can be a little more flexible, especially with all of the online tools that are available to us, I think that really does help with the buy-in. And if we can tie it into what the kids are interested in, we can easily allow for that voice and choice to hit what they're interested in at the same time, the standards we're trying to achieve, and sort of have that marriage. I think that does help. I was told specifically that everything that the kids do online, at least through Launch, has to tie into a grade, otherwise they won't do it. I'm really struggling with that, because when I was in the classroom, I would want a lot of learning to happen, not because it was tied into points, because that was the right thing to do. And so in an online environment, that's actually been a struggle, tying things back to points just because. But I'm working through it. We're trying to find some happy mediums there to where we can differentiate a little bit and sort of have them expand if they want, but then the things that really do count for points are truly tying in to the standards and what we're trying to assess them on. I think having activities and information that's chunked, being aware of the time, if you're doing a flipped video, being aware of how long it lasts, because that whole, what do I call it? What's the word I'm looking for, Jonathan? I'm tongue-tied right now. The time that the kids want to spend on an activity, they have very short attention spans.
Thank you.
Attention spans. I'm only a former language teacher. I don't know my vocabulary. But yeah, the attention span piece is really important, especially with online components. And so being aware of how long we're asking the kids to spend on a particular activity, I think, is important. And a part of this whole thing is training the kids up front how to handle an online piece. I know in Rockwood, we actually have a mini course that they have to take before they can truly enroll in an online course. And that whole mini course is teaching them about the attention span. It's teaching them about which buttons to push, how to be active in seeking out help, and basically how to be your own best resource before they even are put into an online learning environment. So we're trying to stave off some of those potential issues up front. So I think that could go a long way in helping their participation too. And I think most importantly, and this will be the last thing I say about this for now, but giving that feedback, because if we're timely in our feedback, that's only going to hopefully encourage them to do even more with it. But if we're not, then they're just going to go through the motions and do what they do and either not be motivated to do it or just wait too long, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that having all of that in place is key. Keeping in mind of that attention span, and not just from a video standpoint, like, don't make your videos 25 minutes long, but also don't make the work itself an extended. I mean, because the whole unit itself or lesson or whatever, don't make that too long as well. And so I think that's good. And I think the time of feedback, obviously, I mean, that's huge. That's
Right.
John Hattie mentioned as an effective practice. And so definitely a good idea to keep that in there. That's something I need to get a little bit better at. I try to check our course every day and get to it, but I don't always have the time to grade everything on my end, but I need to get better at making sure that I have that time blocked off there as well. So any last minute ideas you want to throw out there along the blended learning space before we kind of close this episode out?
Sure. I will say for those people who may be considering online learning, there is sort of an acceptable formula for how long kids should spend in an online course. I mean, per semester, at least at the secondary level, it's 60 hours. That's 60 hours per semester. So you're looking at 120 hours for a full year course. And so as you're designing your lessons, and I think we can link to a template in the session notes too, just to kind of give an outline of what this could look like. Just kind of, again, being aware of how long each activity could take. And then over the course of your units, get as close to that 60 mark as possible per semester. And I think that'll be sort of the magic number that everybody's looking at. So I found that to be pretty helpful as I'm designing the online learning piece. Again, not arbitrary numbers, but truly thinking, if I were a student, how long this would take. And I would definitely reemphasize the importance of storyboarding everything before putting it into a learning management system. So you know the flow, you know how one activity links to another, and keep truly asking yourself, is this activity the best of the best? Is this going to be, what I want the kids to do that's truly going to reflect whatever standards or proficiency scales that I'm trying to hit? And I would say if you're working on it as a team of people, keep the team small. I know a lot of times professional development pulls in every teacher from X curriculum is going to meet on this day. I would actually argue the opposite. Keep it to 2 or 3 people, keep that circle small, include a technology person, include a curriculum person, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. And that way there's a uniformity to the process. It's not to leave everybody out, but I think having fewer numbers has been really helpful, at least for us. So that's kind of what else I would add to what we've already said.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so a lot of stuff that we talked about throughout this episode will be in the show notes. Go to metcedplus.org. Plenty of links to templates, to other resources that Brian will share, and I may pop in a couple of resources as well. And so, Brian, great conversation around blended learning and online learning spaces. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today.
No, it's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking more about this with you later.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
All right, so it is time for Living METC's Mission with our guest, Brian Reed. Welcome, Brian. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. Well, M is for motivate. So what motivates you?
For me, it all comes down to doing what's best for students, and a part of that is the district initiatives that advocate progress. When a new initiative arises and I see potential in it, I definitely dive head first into supporting that initiative and try to do whatever I can to contribute as much as I can, because it's all about the students.
Absolutely. E is for engage. How do you engage your students or staff?
I tend to charm them. Not like Eddie Haskell charm. And for those people who don't know what Eddie Haskell or who Eddie Haskell is, definitely YouTube, Leave It to Beaver. But in this case, I charm them nonetheless. No, I definitely work on building and maintaining a rapport. That's one of the first things I do, is getting to know the students as individuals, what motivates them, what interests them, and getting to know them on a personal level. And then I meet them at their level and challenge them to go beyond it. I definitely sprinkle in some humor and some relevance, and whatever I'm presenting or collaborating on, I want it to make sense in the easiest to swallow manner. And so getting to know them is a huge part of that.
All right, for all those young educators listening who don't know who Eddie Haskell is, click on the show notes and find the link to that YouTube channel there. All right, so T is for transform. And what is an area in which you have transformed or helped transform in your district?
Sure, especially since I've moved into the instructional technology role. One area I've personally transformed is in how I approach collaborating with others. You know, in the past, I had a tendency to let my energy come across a little too strong, a little too passionate at times, which isn't a bad thing, but I've learned how to stop and step back and listen. And so, you know, I've worked hard on sort of calming down, listening to others, valuing and truly valuing their ideas and opinions. And so now I can enjoy collaboration time more than just, I've got to get out everything that I'm thinking because I think it's the best thing ever. But I've definitely learned a lot in the process. And a huge part of learning is just listening. And so I think that's been awesome.
All right. And C, who are you connected with that others should be connected with as well?
Yeah, you know, I thought long and hard about this. I mean, other than connecting with yourself, of course, I would definitely recommend connecting with Jonathan. And we'll connect on the golf course, I'm sure, sometime very soon. I want to give a plug to some of the local, groups that we have. You know, at Learning STL would be a great one to connect with. A lot of great people belong to that Connected Coaches network. You know, at ETA of STL would be a great one. At EdTech Pod Squad, shout out to my Pod Squad peeps. Those are some good peeps too, right? Absolutely, you included for sure. And I would say anything at ISTE, there's a lot of different ISTE networks to connect with, I think would be important. And as a special shout out to my my robotics peeps at FTC Teams, everything robotics and everything STEM would be awesome.
Nice. And so, yes, all of those will be in the show notes. So click on those, connect with them, follow them on Twitter, and grow your PLN with Brian and myself.
Absolutely. Okay.
Brian, thank you for sharing how you are living METC's mission. I greatly appreciate that.
That was a pleasure.
All right, well, that brings this episode to a close. Thank you for joining us for episode 64 of the METC podcast. Big shout out to Brian Reed for sharing all his knowledge around blended and online learning. Be sure to connect with him, connect with everybody that he mentioned in his I Am METC section, and keep the conversation going. Speaking of keeping that conversation going, be sure to follow us on Twitter using the hashtag METC podcast. And go to Flipgrid and search METC Podcast as well. Remember, the challenge for this episode is to share your blended or online learning experiences. Whether you're a student or whether you're a teacher of online learning spaces, share how you are effectively running with instructions. So again, if you're a student, what are some pretty cool ways you've been engaged within online content? Or if you're an instructor of online content, what are some ways you engage your students within your content? So again, share using the hashtag METC podcast, and we will share those out on future episodes. Be sure to catch up with us on all the events we have going on around the state of Missouri and the country, really, because we'll be in Orlando and Philly in the next 6 weeks. And connect with us. Be sure to stop in, say hello. I will be sure to post my picture so you know who I am and not just my voice. Come say hello. We'll have stickers. We can have a beverage or two and talk ed tech. I'd be really excited about that. So that is all for this episode. Again, thank you for joining us. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you listen with that particular app, and I greatly appreciate that. Our mission is to share the story of great educators doing innovative things around our region, and your reviews help other people hear these awesome stories. So, until our next episode and next great conversation, have a good one, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Midwest Education Technology Communities podcast, otherwise known as METC. To learn more about METC, check out our website at metcedplus.org or follow us on social media at METCEdPlus. To learn more about Education Plus, go to edplus.org.